Many people have heard of Edgar Cayce. Cayce's biography, There Is a River, The Story of Edgar Cayce, was originally published in 1942 and is still read today. Cayce's work is still studied by the Association for Research and Enlightenment, or the ARE, in Virginia Beach, Virginia. During his lifetime, Edgar Cayce gave over 14,000 readings. Most of these readings were health-related, and he was famous for his natural cures. But Edgar Cayce gave readings on other topics, like Atlantis, life readings for individuals, and most surprisingly for Cayce himself, astrology. Before we dive into Cayce's astrology, let's provide more background information on Edgar Cayce and discuss some of the Cayce terminology that we will be using. Edgar Cayce has been called the sleeping prophet, the father of holistic medicine, and the most documented psychic of the 20th century. For more than 40 years of his adult life, Cayce gave psychic readings to thousands of seekers while in an unconscious state, diagnosing illnesses and revealing lives lived in the past and prophecies yet to come. So, who exactly was Edgar Cayce? Edgar Evan Cayce was born on March 18, 1877, in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. While he exhibited some psychic abilities as a child, he became noticed when, as an adult, he began successfully diagnosing illnesses and recommending treatment when he went into a meditative state while lying down. For that, he was known as the sleeping prophet. One of the unique things about Cayce, and in my opinion, the major reason his work survives to this day, is that all of his readings were documented. A stenographer named Gladys Davis wrote down every word that was said during the readings. Cayce's wife Gertrude would ask him questions while he was in trance, and he would answer. So, how did Edgar Cayce gain his knowledge to help so many people? When Edgar Cayce went into a trance, he would first lie down on a couch, fold his hands on his chest, and then his soul would travel to the Hall of Records. Once there, Cayce would be able to access the Akashic records of the soul or entity that he was reading for. The Akashic records list all experiences since the beginning of time, believed by some metaphysical traditions to be stored on an indelible non-physical medium called Akasha. The Akashic library is lit up with a bright golden light. The books are laced with beautiful seals. Each soul or entity has its own book with its own seal. Each seal is inscribed by an angel, who is the keeper of your Akashic record. There are many angels who are the keepers of the Akashic records for humanity. There are Akashic records for all of life in the universe. Akashic records contain the entire existence of your soul, including all incarnations. Your records are stored within a book that is specifically dedicated to you. Within that book is contained the horoscope or astrology chart for each incarnation, your soul mission for each lifetime as documented by your astrological chart. A specifically designed astrological chart is chosen to best assist you in your soul development for that upcoming incarnation. Yes, it is true you help select the date, time, and place of your birth, even your parents and siblings. Remember, to everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven. What does it mean to sojourn? It means to dwell for a time. Sojourns are planetary dimensions that souls visit for a time between lives, between incarnations. Prior to each incarnation, a soul spends time visiting the planetary energies best suited for its upcoming soul mission. Each entity or soul completes a series of sojourns. A separate chapter in your Akashic record describes each sojourn and what you learned from it. Cayce described interplanetary sojourns as such. We, as souls or entities, go to the dimensions of the planets, such as Mercury, Mars, or Jupiter, as well as to important stars such as Arcturus or Polaris. These dimensions are like schools or vibratory centers that emphasize lessons and encourage specific tendencies and talents. For instance, the Venus dimension inspires in people a desire for harmony, music, and song, beauty and fairness. Uranus emphasizes contrast and distinctions and could be prone to extremism. Pluto, which Cayce described 7 years before it was discovered, emphasizes the development of consciousness. Let's first read through and discuss the beginning of reading 254-2, in which Cayce talks about the influence the planets have on us. Gertrude Cayce posed this question to Edgar while under trance. Do the planets have anything to do with the ruling of the destiny of men? If so, what? Edgar Cayce responded, they do. In the beginning, as our own planet Earth was set in motion, the placing of other planets began the ruling of the destiny of all matter as created. Just as the division of waters was and is ruled by the moon in its path about the Earth, just so as in the higher creation, as it began, is ruled by the action of the planets about the Earth. The strongest power in the destiny of man is the sun first, then the closer planets, or those that are coming in ascendancy at the time of the birth of the individual. But let it be understood here, no action of any planet, or any of the phases of the sun, moon, or any of the heavenly bodies surpass the rule of man's individual willpower, the power given by the Creator of man in the beginning, when he became a living soul, with the power of choosing for himself. The inclination of man is ruled by the planets under which he is born. In this far, the destiny of man lies within the sphere or scope of the planets. With the given position of the solar system at the time of the birth of an individual, it can be worked out, that is, the inclinations and actions without the willpower taken into considerations. So what Cayce is saying is that the planets rule the destiny of man, unless man exercises his God-given free will. The subconscious and the conscious mind are two elements that guide our actions. The subconscious mind operates below the level of conscious awareness. It influences behavior, thoughts, and feelings. Automatic habits and intuition operate at the subconscious level. Another way of saying this is that the subconscious mind is more driven to actions taken without directed thought. Under these circumstances, I would expect that your horoscope has a significant impact on your life. The conscious mind, however, uses more directed thought to control actions. Through God-given willpower and conscious thought, you can change your actions and modify an outcome. If you are aware of your horoscope and the transiting planetary energies currently in effect, using the conscious mind to drive your actions should enable you to utilize those energies more effectively. According to the Cayce readings, the sun indicates strength in life, while the moon indicates change. One of the most concise descriptions Edgar Cayce provided of the planets was in reading 900-10 in 1924. While in trance, Cayce described the planets as such: as in Mercury, pertaining of mind, in Mars of madness, in Earth as of flesh, in Venus as love, in Jupiter as strength, in Saturn as the beginning of earthly woes, that to which all insufficient matter is cast for the beginning, in that of Uranus as of the psychic, in that of Neptune as of mystic. Since this reading was conducted in 1924, the planet Pluto had not yet been discovered or named. In the readings, Pluto was often referred to as Septimus, so in Septimus as of consciousness. The star Arcturus was also named. Cayce described Arcturus as the portal to other dimensions, or whereby an entity might choose to leave our solar system and work on soul development in others. The sun in a person's astrological chart represents his or her ego, self, and sense of self-awareness. The sun is the source of all life on Earth, absorbing matter and putting out energy, light, and heat. Very few people have planetary sojourns in the sun, but it is possible. The planetary aspects to a person's sun position are critical to his or her character and destiny. This is particularly true if the sun is conjunct, at the same position, with one of the planets. In that case, the sun colors the person's personality with the influence of that particular planet. For example, if a person has sun conjunct Venus, it might indicate that the person values creating harmony and bringing people together. It is associated with a desire for love, companionship, and harmony in relationships. Sun conjunct Mars gives an assertive and independent identity, and the person is eager to take action and initiate change. It is associated with energy, passion, and drive. Any sun aspect, good or bad, can be the most important aspect in a person's chart, period. In addition to representing the ego in a chart, the sun represents a person's health and vitality, willpower and strength. Negative aspects to the sun can indicate egotism, self-aggrandizement, or a proclivity to force the will on others. Positive aspects of the sun can be indicative of an inner core strength. The moon in a person's astrological chart has to do with his or her emotional nature. The moon also reflects the mother in a chart, as well as relationships with women in general. Cayce's readings indicated that the moon could provide insights of your time before this incarnation. Some astrologers believe the moon is more prominent in the chart during childhood. Perhaps this is why young children are often more aware of past life experiences. The key to the moon's influence in the birth chart is in the aspects the moon makes with other planets. For example, a bad aspect from Neptune would create a tendency for emotional confusion, while a good aspect from Mars would create a tendency for positive emotional vitality. The planet Mercury is associated with the mind and mental reasoning. It also rules communications, contracts, and speech. Positive aspects by other planets to Mercury refine the method of communication. For example, a Mercury-Mars aspect would indicate someone who is direct and straightforward. A poorly aspected Mercury might indicate an individual who has problems speaking or communicating. Sojourns in Mercury are associated with higher mental abilities and the ability to understand and deal with people. They can also give the soul the ability to process and communicate information. Cayce said that the mind is the builder, whether in the material, the social, mental, or spiritual. Reading 146-2. Our mind then focuses the spiritual energy into creative or destructive, positive or negative avenues of expression. The impact of our choices will eventually find expression in the physical realm, affecting our health, our lives, and our relationships with one another. In traditional astrology, Venus is the planet that represents love and beauty. Aspects to Venus can give clues as to how love will manifest in your life. The planet has the attributes of love, mercy, patience, kindness, and long-suffering. Venus's greatest influence is in the area of love, romance, and sex. Any Venus-Mars aspect can give someone a powerful sexual appeal. A badly aspected Venus can indicate problems in finding love and lasting affection. In addition, Venus loves music, nature, and the arts. People with a well-aspected Venus often have ability as musicians, artists, or stage performers. Venus influences an appreciation for the finer things in life. Edgar Cayce agrees with the traditional astrological view, associating Venus with love and beauty. Cayce tells us that people who have had Venus sojourns know how to attract the opposite sex. A planetary sojourn in Venus indicates abilities in music and arts and gives one a love of the beauty of nature. Mars in a person's chart signifies energy and desire. It has an energizing force that brings strength to any planet it's aspecting. Mars is all about action and tends to have more masculine tendencies. A positively aspected Mars may indicate athletic abilities. Anger and violence can result if Mars is poorly aspected, but mostly a bad Mars aspect will tend towards more aggressive actions, which can lead to accidents or injury. The Cayce readings warn that sojourns in Mars may reflect anger and wrath in certain individuals. It is important to develop higher spiritual ideals to help mitigate this. In traditional natal astrology, the planet Jupiter is about philosophy, religion, and spiritual strength. A well-aspected Jupiter displays a positive, optimistic attitude and one of general benevolence. Jupiter is about expansiveness, and its influence, either positive or negative, is always big. Jupiter brings a sense of nobleness of purpose and good fortune. Jupiter also enjoys a love of travel. From the Cayce reading 2420-1, we find in Jupiter the same type of influence as in its dealings or relationships to the masses, as Jupiter represents that consciousness or activity of a universality of strength, of might, of power. Edgar Cayce links Jupiter's sojourns with the universal consciousness and our connection with God. In traditional astrology, Saturn is the planet of discipline and responsibility. It is the hard taskmaster that makes us face difficulties and overcome them through determination and hard work. Negative Saturn aspects are the toughest ones found in traditional astrology. These aspects result in everything being swept away that we have depended upon for security. Saturn is also referred to as the Lord of Karma. Positive Saturn aspects result in the fulfillment of long-term goals. A strong Saturn in a person's chart shows the ability to work hard for future gains. Edgar Cayce's view of Saturn differs slightly from traditional astrology. Cayce says that Saturn represents change. A between-life Saturn sojourn can create problems for people, in that they desire constant change and are not able to follow anything through to its completion. Saturn is also where souls have been sent who have done evil during a past lifetime. Souls who need to be remade. These are souls that require change. Uranus is the planet of originality, freedom, and eccentricity. People with a powerful Uranus in their chart desire freedom at all costs. Edgar Cayce also tells us that Uranus is the planet of extremes, which leads to up and down situations in life. Nothing will keep these people from expressing themselves, and they can express themselves in very unusual ways. They are not confined by tradition, and at their best, their different ways of thinking can create new inventions and new ways of doing things. At their most positive, they can be considered geniuses. The negative influence of Uranus can make these people seem eccentric. Uranus rules the occult and astrology, and Cayce agrees with this traditional viewpoint. A sojourn in Uranus brings an interest in psychic abilities and occult subjects, hence Uranus's nickname, the psychic. Sojourns in Uranus tend to make a person more sensitive to the feelings and vibrations of others. The Cayce readings have frequently said that individuals who have had past lives in Atlantis have Uranian sojourns between lives. Cayce also said that many former Atlanteans are incarnating at this time, and that this is a parallel time in history to the time of Atlantis. Therefore, we are now experiencing a time of extremes and high technology, especially in the field of electronics. Neptune is known as the mystic. It is the planet of mysteries and mysticism. In positive aspect, it gives the dreams and visions that inspire us to do great things. Positive Neptune aspects provide intuitive understanding of the spiritual mysteries of life. This understanding can come in the form of dreams that also fall within the realm of Neptune's influence. With a negative aspect, it gives the confusion and delusion that leads us down the wrong path. People with negative Neptune aspects can be victims of alcohol or drug abuse. According to Edgar Cayce, Neptune sojourns lead people to seek out the mysteries of life. A Neptune sojourn will bring an interest in the spiritual. The spiritual influences of Neptune often come through dreams and visions. Traditional astrology tells us that Neptune rules large bodies of water, and Cayce agrees with this. In some cases, the readings indicated a love of water. However, Cayce also gave warnings to some people who had sojourned in Neptune to stay away from large bodies of water. The planet Pluto wasn't discovered until 1930, but in the earlier Edgar Cayce readings, Pluto was referred to either as Septimus or Vulcan. Pluto is the planet of willpower, death, and regeneration. If it is in negative aspect with other elements in a person's chart, it gives a tendency towards dictatorial attitudes. In a positive aspect, it gives deeper, penetrating awareness. Pluto is the planet of mass destiny and the collective consciousness. Cayce described Pluto as a developing influence. As such, very few people had readings that included the planet Pluto. Perhaps this is related to its recent discovery compared to other planets, such that the role of Pluto itself is developing, especially given the collective move into the age of Aquarius and the planet itself entering the sign of Aquarius for the first time since its discovery. During reading 5749-14 with Thomas Sugru, the author of There is a River, questions were asked about the star Arcturus. Arcturus is currently located at 24 degrees Libra, 33 minutes. Arcturus was described as the center of this universe, through which individuals may pass to go to other planetary systems. So Arcturus is also called a portal. Once an individual begins incarnating in one solar system, they must complete that system's solar cycle before moving to another. And so in Arcturus as of the developing. Interpreting a Cayce reading is always a bit challenging, especially if you include astrological terminology that is probably a century out of date. We had quite an adventure interpreting some of this language, but I thought it would be good for you to actually experience that translation process. First, I'll read to you as dictated by Cayce. Then I'll go through the planets and show you how it was translated onto an astrology chart. Before I discuss the Cayce charts, however, let's review the basic architecture of an astrology chart. Historically, astrology was done by looking at the stars and their positions in the sky. Your ascendant represents the position of the sun in the sky at sunrise. This is when the sun ascends above the horizon. With this ideal chart, we'll say 6 a.m. Although in reality, sunrise and sunset vary by time of season and position on the Earth. The highest position in the sky during the day is called the midheaven. so in an ideal chart it is 12 noon. Again, this varies slightly by individual chart. Sunset, or when the sun descends below the horizon, is the descendant and occurs around 6 p.m. And finally, the nadir is around 12 midnight. One of the most specific examples of an astrological chart was given, again, in reading 254-2. This reading was done for Edgar Cayce's horoscope and is probably one of the most useful astrological readings I've found. In a trance, Edgar said, "As in this body here," Edgar Cayce, born March 18, 1877, 3 minutes past 3 o'clock, with the sun descending on the wane, the moon in the opposite side of the earth, old moon, Uranus at its zenith, hence the body is ultra in its actions, Neptune closest in conjunction, or Neptune as it is termed in astrological survey, in the 9th house, Jupiter, the higher force of all the planets, save the sun, in descendancy, Venus just coming to horizon, Mars just set, Saturn, to whom all insufficient matter is cast at its decay, opposite the face of the moon. These are the key elements mentioned when describing Edgar Cayce's chart. Sun descending on the wane, moon in the opposite side of the earth, old moon, Neptune closest in conjunction in the 9th house, Uranus at its zenith, Jupiter in descendancy, Venus just coming to the horizon, Mars just set, Saturn opposite the face of the moon. Now let's walk through each of these planetary elements referenced in reading 254-2. This is the natal chart for Edgar Cayce. As mentioned in the reading, the date was March 18, 1877, and the location was Hopkinsville, Kentucky. The birth time used was specifically reported in the reading as 3:03, with the sun waning, so it was p.m. The following are the descriptions from the Cayce reading of the chart elements and a visual and translation of the terminology used. Sun descending on the wane means that the sun in the chart is past the midheaven and descending in the sky heading towards sunset. The moon in opposite side of the earth, old moon, means that the moon is opposing the 4th house cusp. The 4th house is the natural home of the moon. In other words, the moon rules the 4th house. In Cayce's chart, the moon is conjunct the 10th house cusp, directly opposing the natural 4th house cusp. Neptune closest in conjunction in the 9th house. Neptune in the 9th house is forming a conjunction with the closest luminary, the moon. Uranus at its zenith. The planet Uranus is almost exactly conjunct the ascendant in this chart. While this could be interpreted with zenith at the midheaven, remember that Cayce described the planets by strength as such. The strongest power in the destiny of man is the sun first, then the closer planets, or those that are coming in ascendancy at the time of birth of the individual. So for the planet Uranus, the conjunction with the ascendant is considered the strongest position in the chart. So this was the zenith for Uranus. Jupiter in descendancy means that the planet Jupiter is below the horizon in the night portion of the chart and approaching midnight, or the nadir of the chart, so it is descending. Venus just coming to the horizon means that the planet Venus is approaching the descendant of the chart. Mars just set means that Mars, located in the 5th house, is below the horizon. In this case, it was the closest planet below the descendant. Saturn opposite the face of the moon. This one was a bit confusing because the moon in this chart is actually in close sextile with Saturn, not opposition. However, what is opposite Saturn is the south node of the moon. The south node represents your past, and is opposite the north node, which is your future. So Saturn is actually conjunct the north node of the moon and opposite the south node of the moon. This indicates leaving his past life behind and moving strongly forward in a new direction. Now let's do a traditional astrological reading of Edgar Cayce's natal chart. The first thing that pops out to you when you look at Cayce's chart is the stellium in Pisces in the 7th and 8th houses. A stellium occurs when 3 or more planets are together in one zodiac sign. In the case of a Pisces stellium, this means there is a highly concentrated energy in that sign, and whatever planet that sign rules is elevated. In this case, the planets Jupiter and Neptune. Pisces is the most psychic sign in the zodiac, and people with the Pisces stellium are often highly sensitive and intuitive, with a strong connection to the spiritual world. With the Sun and Venus in the 8th house, this energy is further enhanced. The Sun in Pisces wishes to explore the mysteries of the universe and has a strong desire for transformation and growth. Individuals with Venus in Pisces may experience both emotional connections and spiritual experiences in their relationships. Both planets placed in the 8th house are focused on the occult and occult matters, psychic abilities, and psychic phenomenon. Edgar Cayce's chart has 4 planets and the north node in the water sign of Pisces. The strong presence of the highly psychic sign of Pisces in 3 of the 5 personal planets indicated a strong psychic ability. In traditional astrology, the lunar nodes represent the soul direction for this lifetime. The south node helps you understand what you've already mastered, the skills you're bringing with you into this life. The south node also reflects the past lives you need to remember and the karmic debts you'll need to repay. This includes unresolved themes from the past that will cause you pain and frustration in this life. Cayce's south node was in the earth sign of Virgo in the 1st house. The north node is associated with your soul mission for this lifetime. Your north node helps you understand your purpose, and once fully understood, it offers the highest potential of accomplishing your soul mission in this life. Cayce's north node was in the water sign of Pisces in the 7th house. The Virgo-Pisces axis is about matter versus spirit. If you're born with Pisces as your north node, your soul mission is to interact with the spiritual domain. The 1st through 7th house axis deals with you and your personality in the 1st versus your role in close relationships in the 7th. More simply put, me versus you. Your south node in the 1st says that during a previous life you were internally focused, or all about me. With a north node in the 7th, your focus is less on yourself and more on a spouse or partner and your relationship with them. During Edgar Cayce's previous lifetime, he was a riverboat gambler who used his psychic skills to make money and attract women. His life was focused on himself, and he was very much of the physical world. Cayce's current incarnation was about serving others and using his psychic skills to help people, especially through healing. If you have planets conjunct your north node, you'll tend to leave your past behind. Your north node will call to you more than your south node. With Venus loosely conjunct the north node, Cayce enjoyed a strong marriage this time around. Edgar was devoted to his wife Gertrude, and she played a critical role in his life and his work. Mercury and Saturn conjunct the north node is more interesting. Saturn, the great taskmaster, and the psychic Mercury in Pisces, which brings the ability to communicate beyond the veil, were tightly aligned with Cayce's soul mission for this lifetime. While it gives the individual a well-structured and disciplined mind, this aspect can be associated with communications issues. This aspect may have been responsible for a critical turning point in Edgar's life. When Edgar left school at 16 to work, he first worked on his family's farm, then in retail and selling insurance. But March of 1900, Cayce suffered a partial paralysis of the vocal cords, which made him unable to speak beyond a whisper, causing him to change his career to photography. In early 1901, he was able to speak again while under hypnosis. He then performed a psychic reading on himself and regained his voice. The Mercury conjunct Saturn issue with his voice was a monumental step in propelling him towards his life's calling. It was after this time that he began doing psychic readings. This was the critical step that taught him how. The most complex aspect pattern in Edgar Cayce's chart is the pattern formed between the Moon, midheaven, Saturn, Mercury, and Mars. This aspect pattern is most closely connected with his spiritual work, since it ties together the career elements of the midheaven, the Earth energies for practical business matters, and the Pisces energies for psychic communications. The Moon conjunct the midheaven in a natal chart signifies that the individual's emotions and instincts are closely tied to their public image and career. Certainly this was the case for Edgar Cayce. If he didn't love his work, he would never have been able to sustain himself through the challenging times during his life. Moon trine Mars work together to integrate the emotional energies of the Moon with the assertive energies of Mars in an individual. In the case of Edgar Cayce, it provided the necessary inner drive and determination to steer his life in the direction he aspired to, even when situations did not always work out the way he'd hoped. Moon sextile Saturn gives emotional maturity and stability. You are the responsible, serious person that people turn to in times of crisis. Frequently, Edgar Cayce was the last resort after all traditional medicine had failed. His first psychic readings were often for children, whose parents were frantic to find a cure for their ailments. Moon sextile Mercury suggests an eloquent, empathic person, someone who could intuitively understand people and quickly form emotional connections. With so many planets in Pisces, it goes without saying that Edgar Cayce was an empath and an intuitive, and his Mercury in Pisces enhanced his abilities to communicate with the spiritual world and the Akashic records. Mars sextile Saturn provides the assertive energies of Mars coupled with the endurance of Saturn. People with this aspect are focused on practical outcomes and are precise and dependable in their work. During Cayce's life, he experienced business failures and the loss of his hospital during the Depression when money sources dried up. With the positive sextile between Saturn and Mars, Cayce had the drive and endurance to adapt and continue his life's work. Mars sextile Mercury provides the energy of Mars to enhance the communications ability of Mercury. Psychic communications at the level that Cayce was doing were both mentally and physically draining. Mars is exalted in the Earth sign of Capricorn, an extremely strong, well-placed planet. This sextile would be extremely helpful to Cayce while doing his psychic work. Uranus conjunct the ascendant in a natal chart produces a personality with a strong need for independence, and one that doesn't conform to traditional or societal standards. While Edgar began his life reading the Bible daily and as a devout Christian, his experiences under trance expanded his worldview in a way that most could not comprehend. It also led to a life full of changes, some rewarding and some challenging. Pluto, the planet of transformation, is squaring Uranus in Cayce's chart. In a way, both Uranus and Pluto are about change. Pluto transforms by destroying current systems and replacing them, hopefully, with something better. Pluto in the 10th house of leadership indicates an individual who will lead others. Cayce, being born with Pluto in a square with Uranus, inspired an entirely new approach to spirituality. He founded the Association for Research and Enlightenment to carry his work forward after his passing. While a mismanaged square can lead to issues with vanity and self-righteousness, Cayce never seemed to go down that path. He allowed the energy and the drive of the square to be a call for action, and the results speak for themselves. Previously, we discussed the stellium in Pisces, and that the planets Jupiter and Neptune rule the water sign of Pisces, thus elevating them energetically. Jupiter trine Neptune encourages the traits of compassion and tolerance, a belief in humanity, helping the disadvantaged, altruism, and a visionary approach. With Jupiter trine Neptune in his birth chart, Edgar Cayce would have had an intuitive or spiritual approach to solving problems, and a compassionate and tolerant worldview or perspective. At one point, Edgar opened a hospital in Virginia Beach that offered holistic medical care. His focus was primarily on the sick and vulnerable, with 80% of his readings being health-related. During World War II, Cayce increased his number of daily readings beyond what his own guides recommended for his own health because people were in such need. While Edgar Cayce is often presented as a poorly educated man, due to his life's work, he was exposed to a much broader world than rural Kentucky. Cayce was born just following the American Age of Spiritualism, which lasted from 1854 until 1873. Spiritualism was a religious movement that gained momentum in America and held that people could communicate with the dead, and enabled people to do that through mediums. If you consider the Jupiter trine Neptune influence in his chart, one must also see the broader influence of spirituality during that period. Jupiter deals with expansion and religious organizations, while Neptune is the mystic and deals with spirituality, energies which greatly influence the direction of Cayce's life and his work. The content of Edgar Cayce's readings was a major influence on the development of New Age thought and on public ideas about paranormal phenomena. Through the organization he founded, the ARE, his work continues to be studied and taught to this day. Thank you for watching. The following references were used extensively in preparing this presentation.